Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes for all our attendees to join the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday afternoon. I'm sure this is a topic of interest for everybody. So we're looking forward to a very insightful, interesting conversation. We'll just give it just one more minute before we actually start the webinar. Okay, I think let's begin. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Avanti. I'm part of the Mumbai membership, NASSCOM membership team. And I, along with my team, welcome you all for this webinar. As we know, it is called From Data to Decisions and how applied AI is redrawing enterprise value chains. So today we know that across industries, organizations are moving beyond the question of whether to adopt AI, but now it is becoming on more to how to apply the AI in ways that create measurable enterprise value. So we are seeing a reshape of AI, how decisions are made across value chains, from risk assessment to customer intelligence to operations, supply chains, healthcare, etc. Right. So, however, the real challenge that the organizations or the enterprises are facing today is not experimentation. I know we've had a lot of prototypes already done, but the main challenge is how to scale those pilots from the AI projects from pilots to production. So today our conversation is going to cover some part which is probably going to help you to implement or overcome some of these challenges. Example, what it really takes to scale AI, how organizations prioritize use cases, what is the operating model that can be used so that AI succeeds, and how leaders can translate AI investments into real business value. And I'm sure that is the main question, correct? So we are fortunate to have today with us three very accomplished leaders working in this space at the forefront of the AI across industries. So let me start with introducing our panelists for today. So we have with us Shauma Kanti Paul. He's the Director, Data and AI at Dun & Bradstreet Information Services India. Welcome, Shauma. We are joined with
Thank you.
us by Krishna Kumar Chakirala. He's the Vice President, Data and AI Practice at Quinox. Welcome, Krishna.
Thanks,
And
Avanti.
joining us today is Gaurav Mundra. He's the head of product management at Omega Healthcare Management Services. Thanks for joining us, Gaurav. So before we actually start our discussion, I would request each of our speakers today to just let us know what it is that they're working on, maybe a couple of lines about themselves. So we'll start with Shoma. If you can just let us know what it is that you're doing these days.
Sure. Thanks, Avanti, for the introduction. I hope I'm audible to all of you. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Happy to talk to all of you today. I'm Shomo. I lead the data analytics and AI initiatives at Dun & Bradstreet India. My responsibilities cover, ensuring our customers benefit from third-party insights, right? And they enrich their first-party data with insights that helps them grow, helps them manage risk, and of course, helps them perform better. Thank you.
Thanks, Shama. Krishna, if we could go to
Sure.
you.
Sure. Thanks again. Nice being on this panel. It's an interesting topic for everyone, I'm sure. So, like Avanti mentioned, I lead the data and AI practice at Quinox. We are a services and platforms company. We work across multiple industries. And my team's job essentially is to work with clients globally, look at problem statements and how AI can actually solve some of these problem statements, not force fit them, solve the problem statements. And AI is just not Gen AI. It cuts across classical machine learning, deep learning, and Gen AI based problems as well.
Thanks, Krishna. Gaurav, if we could hear from you.
Surely. Hi, everyone. Good to connect with you on this webinar. I lead the product management team at Omega Healthcare, which is one of the largest healthcare outsourcing services and solutions company in India, focused exclusively on the US healthcare market. It's interesting because healthcare wants all kinds of insights, but healthcare typically is a laggard when it comes to adoption of technology. And that's primarily because of the sensitive nature of data that we deal with. We're not dealing with data actually, we're dealing with people's lives. So that brings its own interesting challenges when we talk about deployment of technology and particularly AI. So we're now in the phase of scaling our initiatives. Last couple of years were all about experimentation. Now this year and the next, we want to focus on scaling initiatives.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. So let's directly get into the conversation. And to begin with, before scaling AI, organizations would probably need the right foundations, correct? So my question is, in each of your experiences, what are the readiness criteria an enterprise must meet before scaling an AI use case beyond a pilot? Is it data maturity? Is it leadership, sponsorship? Or having a clear ROI hypothesis. So maybe Shoma, if you could start with this, and then I'll go to each one of you for this.
Sure, Avanti. It's an apt question as well to begin our discussion today. I would actually put certain criteria. One would obviously be very clear about the use cases, right? And of course, be very clear on the value and the outcome that the initiative would drive, right? So that's, to me, is critical for us to even talk about a starting point, right? The second thing I'll talk about, and coming from a company that's one of the largest providers of data and insights, would be trusted data, right? And by trusted data, it's beyond data accuracy, but more importantly about data reliability. And today, as we know, it's not just data as in tabular data or data across databases, right? We talk about documents a lot, right? So having a well managed process to curate and provide documents to any of the outcomes that we are talking about is very important. And third, I'll put it as governance, right? To have a strong AI governance, standard policies, determined and set up so that any initiative under that follows and abides by a certain rule book, right? So I'll just put it as A, clarity on use case, trusted data, which includes documents as well, and third would be AI governance. Avanti, you're on mute. If you could just unmute. Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, Krishna, what is your view? Thanks, Shoma, for that.
No, thanks. Absolutely. I think the first point, selecting the right use case is absolutely, it's no brainer. Okay, selecting the right use is critical. But more importantly, the second bigger point is your use case cannot be a very siloed use case. It has to get integrated into your business process. That's where the actual value is. Okay. And third thing, you also need to see what's the financial feasibility. For every $100 that you spend on an AI use case, are you really extracting value in terms of ROI, in terms of cost savings, or new revenue that's getting generated, or experience, some business metric that needs to be shown. So these are some critical areas. And last but not the least, in today's age, if you really want to scale in enterprises, change management is getting critical, right? How do users actually adopt AI solutions? There are users who are possibly afraid of how that would impact their own careers as well. So change management becomes very, very critical for successful AI implementations.
Right. Thanks, Krishna. Gaurav, what would you like to add to the readiness piece?
Yeah, I think Shoma and Krishna covered a few of the most critical items. What I would also add to the list are a couple of other key things. One is, not only do you have to pick up the right case, but you have to define what is the acceptance criteria. What is the definition of success? It can't be, oh, let's just build an AI tool because everybody else is doing it and my manager is after my life. Right? That's not where we start. The second aspect is, some of these initiatives could be significantly expensive, time consuming, and mission critical. So you need executive sponsorship where people understand that this is not like, flip the switch where AI will start giving you results tomorrow morning. You build models, you train the models, then you test it on your test data. If the results are not good enough on test data, you go back and start hyperparameter tuning and stuff like that. So it's not like your traditional software development life cycle. And that understanding is critical. And last but not the least is, demo readiness is not equal to production readiness. I show something working great on a 10,000 line item data set doesn't mean it's going to work really, really well on my production data set. I'm sure we'll cover in more details, but a lot of work has to be done before you actually say, okay, now I'm ready to go after and, start implementing.
Right. So in continuation with that, you also mentioned, and Soma and Krishna also mentioned, what could be the criteria to identify and prioritize which use cases to scale first? Like you rightly mentioned, if it is working in a prototype, doesn't necessarily mean it will scale. So what should the organization do? Should they take a problem first approach, like identify the problem and try to solve it? Or do you see that AI first exploration would be more useful?
See, that depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build fundamental products on AI, then it could be a tool first approach or AI experimentation approach. Great. If you are using AI to solve a business problem, for example, in healthcare, then what you have to think of is, imagine in your mind a 2 by 2 grid where you're saying, hey, what is the business impact of doing this, and what is the feasibility of us succeeding? Do we have the understanding? Do we have the wherewithal? Do we have the money to spend? Do we have the patience to build this or even get it built outside? Right? Number one. Number two, don't just run into it because everybody else is doing it. So that copycat effect is something that I always warn leaders about. Don't do it because everybody else is doing it. Do it because it delivers value. Now, value could be in terms of leg up against competition. Your competition does not have what you're going to build, or it is going to, drastically improve efficiency in terms of speed, cost, quality, right? Or it is going to give you a significant revenue stream in what your existing markets are. So those would be some of the key considerations to decide. You have a long list. What do you go after first?
Okay, cool. So what you're saying is, depending on what it is that you want to achieve, you decide on the approach. Right, cool. So Krishna, do you want to add anything to this? Any other considerations to be taken?
No, I absolutely agree with Gaurav. I'll just expand a little more. I think both problem first, AI first has a role to play. That's the job of AI strategists to figure out what approach to take depending on the maturity of the organization. Problem first essentially makes sense when there's a concrete business outcome, pain points which you need to solve, and you need to ask the question: can I actually improve this materially? Okay. The AI first approach comes into role when there's a new AI capability like agentic AI, which we're talking about right now, and we need to ask the question: what fundamental business operating model or a product can these new AI technologies fundamentally change, transform? Okay, using it, that's where AI first approach would come in. That's the type of mindset I would go on with.
Okay, that sounds good. Sharma, what is your view on this?
Yeah, no, I'm aligned with the panelists, and I want to just borrow a term that, Krishna was pointing to, right? When we talk about use cases and problem statements, we often tend to look at them as siloed ones, right? Standalone problem statements, forgetting that these problem statements don't exist in silos, right? They are interconnected. So having a larger expanse to other problem statements that are either being influenced or dependent on, right, is a very important starting point to even scope out a use case, right? So multiple problem statements exist. They are interconnected in a business environment, and having a very clear, a view on that is important, right? Especially because you have to scope things out, right? Otherwise, it becomes an open end. A second point, just quickly, we talked about ownership, but it's important to understand it's really not only about ownership in terms of who owns the implementation, but more importantly, and I personally think it's more important to understand who owns the outcomes of AI, right? So there could be a ownership in terms of implementing, but it could be, say, for example, in my company, I may be the one who is responsible for implementing it. It's my BU leaders, right? The different leaders across business units who are actually consuming the value out of AI, essentially are those who are A, telling me, hey, this is good or bad. B, they are reporting the value. They are reporting whether it's a case for saving costs, stat improvement, so on and so forth, right? And they are the ones who are also giving me the feedback, right, for something that needs to be looked into or improved, right? So ownership in terms of outcomes of AI is as much critical or many times more important than just ownership of implementation. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, since we spoke about the pilots and all of you have given us the right criteria, so even after, let's say, doing all of this, the pilots are bound to fail, some of them, right? So, from your experiences, if you can tell us what are the top 2 or 3 reasons that the pilots fail to scale, and more importantly, what the leaders can do proactively to avoid these pitfalls, or any suggestions you might have to avoid failures, or maybe failures are good.
Probably I can take that first. See,
Yeah.
failures are always good. Like Edison
Mm.
said, I know 999 ways how not to invent a light bulb. So that
Yes.
is good, but couple of key reasons where I'll talk about my industry and my domain, where we
Mm.
see uh, AI pilots failing to scale up to real world situations is not having enough representative data, right? It's a very funny catch-22 situation. You go to any enterprise customer and say, hey, do you want to reap the benefits of AI? Answer is hell yes. Hey, can I use your data to train my models? Hell no. Okay. So if nobody wants their data to be used to train the engine or the model, then how do you expect the engine or the model to handle all your edge cases? That's number
Mm.
one. So have enough data. The second aspect is not taking care of all the compliance and information security issues up front. Again, let me talk about my industry and my domain. We deal with enterprise healthcare customers. Our customers typically have billion-dollar revenues, right? And they have large information security teams who will come and uh, look under every stone to see what's there. And if there is the slightest amount of risk of patient health information being compromised, then that's a stop right there. Right. Then the third thing is, and we discussed this a little bit, but I want to give a very strong example here. One has to understand how your solution is actually going to integrate with the actual workflow. For example, I'm on call with an insurance company, and the insurance company says, oh, we denied your claim because of ABC reason. Now, I have a caller co-pilot, which is listening to this conversation, but it takes 30 seconds to respond back with the next recommendation. And the insurance guy says, hey, do you have any more questions? 1, 2, 3, hang up. Right? So you really have to understand that no matter how good the solution is, you cannot take 30 seconds in that situation. So understand not just the AI aspect, but the failure often happens outside that core AI piece, is how I look at it.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good example there. Krishna, do you have any
Yeah,
examples
yeah,
to share?
absolutely. Maybe I'll add a little bit on the data, the data story, what Gaurav was mentioning. See, I think there are 3 things within data because we keep talking to a lot of enterprises and data is still the fundamental problem statement. Okay. One is you may have data, but it's not available in the right location. Okay. In the right format. Okay. Second is the data quality part of it. You have data, but it's not in the right quality. The third is you may have the data in the right location, the right quality, but you cannot use it because of PII related issues or security related issues. Okay. So, there are multiple problem statements even within the data term as well. So I think that becomes key. And that's why, and there are solutions for each of these as well. We keep talking a lot about synthetic data these days. You really don't have to worry about your actual data. Create synthetic data to train your models. uh, I
Mm.
think that's fundamental. Data is absolutely fundamental. And one other thing I think Shoma mentioned about the lack of ownership earlier, that's super critical. So, and it's not ownership about how well or how accurate the model works. It's the ownership of the outcomes of the entire, solutions, AI solutions that are being driven. I think that is very, very important. I'll highlight these 2 points, Avanti.
Great, great. And Shoma, do you want to add anything from your experience?
Yeah, sure. Avanti, the funny thing about pilots is they are always presented as, shiny tools, right? They all look great,
Yeah.
right? When put in production, a lot of them break, right? But keeping that
Correct.
aside, I think it's important to understand, we do pilots and all of us do pilots. We do proof of concepts and we have all different names to it, right? Um, what Gaurav talked about is actually how do you embed them in a workflow, and a workflow may not be about a single pilot or two pilots. It could be multiple, right? So so the one of the problems is disconnected pilots, right? You pick up a problem statement, you build something, you show it as a shiny tool, it all looks great. But in a workflow, there are X number of steps, and each step may have multiple decision points, right? To put that in a workflow, you need maybe multiple things to work together. So a real world experience would be very different from how we always, and I'm sure all of us at some point have been guilty of doing it, right? We always show it as a shiny thing, and our leaders would be all wow for it, right? So I think understanding workflows well, and that's where domain comes in, right? And Gaurav and Krishna spoke about industry use cases, right? So even in as an example, in one of my areas, which is about how do you provide credit risk insights, commercial credit risk insights, right? That a lot of lenders may use, right? They're not one thing. It's not just a credit risk score or a rating, related to an entity. A lot of it is about the background, the context, a lot of financial analysis, the data presented in a way that is explainable in its own way, right? And then comes the score and all. If one has to build a pipe for all of this pieces put together, it is not just one pilot, doesn't work, right? So putting everything in together is very important for pilots, however shiny they may look like, to push to for them to work in the real world pipelines, right? So that would be an important ask.
Yeah, great. So we saw.
I'll just add one point, maybe a little out of turn, but I think what's important. I was actually talking to a bank CIO of a bank last week, and he felt that they were not ready for AI as yet. Okay, which is absolutely fair. Okay, so the readiness of the organization, the enterprise also is very, very critical. Okay, so you cannot be too early in the game where you're culturally not ready, your organization is not ready for it. I think that's a very, very key point, and it's appreciable that there are leaders who are actually looking that perspective as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So building up on this itself, right? So when we are talking about integrating workflows, then we come to the point of what should be the operating model be like for the AIs, right? So for scaling AI, so does a centralized AI center for excellence work, or a federated model works, or a business led AI pods work? How have you implemented it in your teams? If you can throw a little bit of light on that. Anyone, maybe Krishna, we can start with you.
I'll start off. I think one fundamental thing in AI world is one size does not fit all. The same thing goes here. Okay, there's no right answer. Okay, it varies from enterprise to enterprise. A centralized COE will always make sense when your initial phase of your journey. It's easy to govern, maintain, build economies of scale. Okay, and in fact, this is the most debated question also in even enterprise AI today. Okay, and none of these models they work universally. Okay, the centralized COE works especially early phase of your journey. The federated model works when you have pockets of maturity across various functions, and each of these have a role to play, Avanti.
Okay, that works. Gaurav, what is your sense in this? How are you implementing?
I'll echo the sentiment from Krishna that it depends on what problem you're solving and where in your journey are you, right? So a couple of examples where people will get a sense of how to think about it is when we started looking at these new AI models and AI agents, as we love to call them today, there was a lot of learning that had to happen for people to learn how to do it and build it right, such that they don't break things. So that is where the whole federated, the centralized started, right? That hey, there's a centralized team. You want to build something, go talk to them. They'll tell you the guidelines, framework. Here are the guardrails. Don't step beyond the Lakshman Rekha. Okay, but as people got more and more excited about it, they started experimenting. Then we realized that every time if I have to go to COE, they may not necessarily understand the business needs and urgency. So we said, okay, decentralize. But then it's like a sine wave, okay? Once you decentralize, then you few weeks later come back and say, oh my God, now people are duplicating the effort, right?
Right.
5 different BUs have built the same AI agent to go check insurance eligibility on Medicare website. What a waste of time, right? If you had built advanced, you could have at least used it. So again, Krishna, the first thing he said was beautiful. There's no one size fits all. Right? So you have to look at your problem statement, the stage of your journey, and it has to keep changing. There's no option there. It will keep changing.
Great, great. Shama, how have you implemented? Do you have a centralized model? Shama?
Hey, okay. We do have a federated one, right? So of course there's a a core AI team, right? And then every local market has their teams. But irrespective of the operating model, I think it's very important to understand the composition of teams itself, right? It's okay to have either one, right? As long as it works in the given context. But the composition of the team essentially would mean do we have enough representation from the domain side, right? Do we have guys who are process experts, right? If one is looking at, maybe a new way of re-engineering a process, right? You really need to get into nitty-gritties of that process, right? So it's very important to have that right mix of individuals and teams, right, who could contribute there. And of course, then once a re-engineering effort has gone in and once a new, to be is defined, then you could think of technology and bringing technology, which could be AI or otherwise, right? So it's very important to understand, the domain part of things, right? And from a operating model, I agree with the panelists, right? We have seen, I mean, all of us have experiences across, companies and industries. You would have seen either ways. Things work, right, or are made to work, right, at one point. But having the right composition, I think, is very critical to getting, the outcomes that one would look forward to. Yeah.
Right. So thanks for that. So once everything is put in place, maybe we are taking it, one size is not fitting all. We are taking decisions on the fly. So then ultimately the question that gets asked is, what is the impact it is getting, that is getting created, right? So how are you guys measuring the real impact of AI beyond cost reduction, of course? And I'm sure cost reduction is not coming out directly also, probably still yet. We are there. I'm not sure we are there yet. So are there any metrics that the leadership teams consistently track or evaluate, or how in your organizations are you measuring the success of the implementation? Maybe we can start with you, Gaurav. You're probably having a bigger...
The way we like to measure it is we first try to break it down into our core business operations and then support function operations. So our core business is services delivery to the end customer, which is a US healthcare services provider, and support functions then include HR, finance, IT, etc., etc. Okay. So for the core functions, we have actively set KPIs and targets for cost savings. Okay. In addition to cost savings, what we have a keen eye on is, has it improved quality? And quality approved by the customer, not like an internal metric. The customer has to sign up saying, yeah, I see a visible difference in the quality improvement, which can then be downstream measured into CSAT and NPS and other things. But there are other softer metrics that we are tracking as upstream metrics. For example, how many decisions are now AI enabled? Okay. And when I talk to my team about, hey, you should use AI and these are my operational colleagues, and I see resistance, then it reminds me of that classic example in the Indian banking industry when the note counting machines were first introduced. Tellers revolted. They said, this will take away our job. We don't want to use it. So one smart bank manager said, great, you don't want to use it? Sure. Okay, I'm going to put it on the other side of the counter. Let customers use it. Right? And customers loved counting the notes on those teller machines because it was so easy for them. And they felt that sense of confidence that, yes, it's a machine doing the job, so it's better. So similarly, we are saying, I recommend that the operations people use it, but I'm anyways giving it to the quality people. right? So if you don't use it and they use it, take a pick who's going to win the game. And then last but not the least, on a C-suite leadership level, can we get deeper insights way earlier than before? We talk about AI enabling predictive analytics. That is really where we want to see, can we forecast that a quality dip will happen or a production dip will happen, which will impact my revenue in the next quarter? And can I start taking actions to mitigate that risk? So tactical, immediate, as well as strategic mid to long term.
That was very interesting example, Gaurav. And it'll be very interesting to see also quality versus implementers. How do you do it, Krishna, in your
Yeah,
organization?
sure. Yeah. No, I think Gaurav mentioned decision making, very, very critical. And these days, speed of essence. How fast, quickly can you take decisions? So I think one of the metrics could possibly be time to decisions. So how your decision making change before and after AI? Okay, that's 1.1. Point two, we look at this whole concept called work done by bots. Okay, how much of work which is done manually today is getting done by bots or done by automation through AI? Okay, this is another key metric. Okay, the third thing where you can look at is employee leverage ratio. Okay, how much of employee output has changed before and after AI? It could be a revenue per employee. It could be the cases handled per analyst. It could be the number of features which is shipped out by an engineer. And this is all and about the basic fundamental metrics, which is cost savings, new revenue, or user experience. Those are fundamental metrics. Okay, and the other metrics that we speak are all complementary metrics to your fundamental metrics. That's the way we should look at it.
Okay, nice. Thanks for that. And Shoma, how do you measure? Do you have any KPIs?
Yeah, so we definitely look at AI as a revenue earner, beyond being an enabler, right? So at DNB, we typically club it under 4 core, capabilities. One would be the conversational intelligence and agentic enablement, right? That we deliver through agents, and we have products like Chat DNB and so on and so forth, right? So that's one. The second would be embedding AI into our core product. So a product like risk analytics, and does it have a conversational interface to help, companies identify, search for supplier information quickly, faster than, traditional browsing through web pages, right? So that's two. We also have AI, which essentially would be in terms of scores and models, right? Failure score on a company and supplier score. So those are all revenue potential, right? And of course, in today's world, we definitely think about connectors, right? So, do I have a set of MCP servers, A2As, out there for our customers to, talk to, interact with, right? So all of these, coming from a product background, all of these essentially are, customer-facing products for customers to integrate with, right? So there's definitely a direct revenue potential, right? But when you look at AI for internal efficiency, the other segment that we look at, right? So AI for internal efficiency would mean, hey, can I use AI? Of course, in a workflow, in a process, which helps us improve our turnaround times, right? And turnaround times should not only be looked at from a cost angle, but of course, better turnaround time improves customer satisfaction, right? Better turnaround times helps me utilize my existing capacity to deliver more, right? And deliver more, or volume expansion essentially translates into revenue, right? And then, of course, the interesting thing, that got discussed just now was, can I improve quality of outputs, right, through AI, right? Use AI where we definitely see gaps in, our current processes, right? And hopefully, with a lot of guardrails, with a lot of AI evals that we go through as, part of development effort, right, to ensure, we increase the chances of the AI being, as good or as reliable as a human analyst, right, is an important metric, right? But the underlying question is always on AI, can I scale with it? Yes, right? How fast and in what forms, right? Which is beyond what a traditional process would have ever imagined, right? So there's this entire potential of using AI to scale up, speed up, and of course, deliver revenue metrics as well beyond internal efficiency and cost savings.
Sure. Thanks, Rama. So I think before I move on to my next question, there are some questions that the audiences have. So I'll read out a few of the questions because we can answer that now. So one of the questions is, how do organizations deal with fragmented or poor quality data when trying to scale AI? I think we've discussed this a little bit, but still in many enterprises, data still sits across legacy systems. Do you recommend fixing the data layer first or building AI models? So, Krishna, I think if you can take
Yeah,
this
yeah.
question,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
Very apt. And this question that we keep getting day out, day in, day out. Solving your data readiness. Data readiness is the first fundamental aspect before you get into your AI journey. Obviously, you can't wait to make it perfect, but getting your data, it could be through unified data platforms. It could be through, there are multiple ways of you can do it. But yeah, that would be fundamental. Get your data right at enterprise level. How you want to start, and depending on the use cases as well. And data readiness is not a destination, it's a journey. So you need to set those fundamentals in place, and so that your data as a fundamental layer keeps growing the right way. That's very, very important. So yeah, that's what I would say, Avanti.
I
Thanks,
just
Krishna.
add one
Yeah,
point to this question, Avanti. This question is very close to my heart because we deal with a tremendous amount of legacy in systems who don't want to talk to each other. See, look at your use case. I don't know who's asked this question, can't see the name, but please look at your use case. If you're looking at an AI tool or solution to give you the final answer, then it is better that you go and fix the data layer. And Krishna very beautifully highlighted all the things that you need to do. But if you have a human in the loop and you're okay to use that human in the loop as editor/auditor, and it does not take a significant amount of adverse impact to your process, then you could even start with a little bit of imperfect data and learn from the what we call as RLHF, reinforced learning through human feedback. Okay, RLHF is very common in the industry. So please think of those two scenarios as well.
Thanks, Gaurav. Actually, the next question was, I think you should be able to answer this one as well. For regulated industries like banking or healthcare, how do you balance AI adoption with compliance or explainability requirements? What frameworks or governance mechanism? And in fact, I also wanted to bring in a flavor of responsible AI because we've not touched upon it. So maybe while you're answering this, if you can touch upon that as well for regulated industries. Yes.
Sure thing. And with healthcare, we hear this question 4 times a day.
Yeah.
What is important is we don't treat AI as a black box. Typically, if you go to a ChatGPT or a Perplexity or a Gemini, you ask a question, it gives you a beautifully drafted answer. The other day I was asking it, something comes back and says, oh, you want to travel to France? We have a F1 racing circuit there. I said, in France, where? It says Monaco. I said, no, you're wrong. It's in the country Monaco, not the city Monaco. Okay. So one has to understand that in enterprises, it's no longer just enough to say this is the answer. There has to be a very clear auditability of how did my tool arrive at this answer. And that auditability has to be created upfront before you even start deploying the tool. Okay. So that is number one. Number two, what a lot of large organizations have started doing is they now have something called an AI ethics committee, which is responsible for, it's like a pun intended, but responsible for responsible AI and explainable AI. Okay. And do no evil, at least in healthcare, that is where we start. If there is a slightest amount of doubt that this can adversely impact patient care, we stop. No matter how efficient the solution might look like or how much cost saving it might bring in, that is an internal discipline that organizations need to have. There are a ton of frameworks out there. We can go into, alphabet soup on it, but I think just be practical and please stick to the thought process, do no evil. You may have a pressure of saving $1 million, earning $1 million by using AI, but don't overlook the possibility of doing harm to people, because there's some serious harm that can be happening if we don't, if we're not very careful about the whole thing.
So just
Thanks, Gaurav.
expanding on that, Avanti, there are actually legal laws which are coming into place in terms of how AI content has to get managed within organizations as well. There are laws coming up in the US, in Middle East as well. So in future, it become a mandate to distinguish what is a AI generated content and what's a human generated content, and how organizations and enterprises are using this as well. So all these are going to get mandated a lot more structured as well as we progress in the next couple of years.
Right. Great. Thanks, Krishna. Shoma, do you have any view on the responsible AI piece?
Yeah, right. So of course, having a AI, governance council that oversees every aspect of standard and policy is important, but more importantly, not at a PPT level, right? But ensuring that it percolates down to every implementation team, right? And ensuring that every AI evals process, right, is well documented, monitored, outcomes are measured, right? While we were discussing, I just remembered, a good paper that came out, and this is, something called as, a paper towards the science of AI reliability, right? One of the outcomes from the paper was about, while over a period of time, right, the accuracies in the larger AI agents world have increased, but the AI reliability, right, has largely remained flat, right? And it's a very good paper. I think it's from the team which is at Arvind and Sayash, right? And very good one to refer. But more importantly, when you look at AI or agentic AI reliability, you measure it across dimensions like consistency, robustness, safety, of course, calibration, etc. Right? So just looking at accuracy may not be the right approach. Expanding it to reliability and reliability related metrics, but having a process in place to actually have some levels of measurement, right, and seeing how to monitor and look at deviations from the standards, right? So that's one part to focus on, given that it's an evolving area as well in terms of AI or agentic AI reliability standards, right? So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Shoma, for that. And there is one question specifically for you, which Sundar is asking, which says that you mentioned about revenue potential for product as a key KPI. So how do you objectively assess that while deciding on making the investment? Can you give an example from your work? Yeah.
Right. No, it's a good question, and the reason could be, just think of A2A and MCP, right? It's not as if there is no other delivery channel out there, right? There has been, web services and APIs for long enough. But, the way that we look at it is our customers are on their own agentic, path, right? They are out there and they want to obviously, get into that, journey and roadmap of having their MCP servers, having their agents out there. And for us to be an enabler, it's important for us to put out those products in the market, right? Our ability to, be, the ones that do it faster than any of our competitors, delivering insights to agents, which enables our customers' agentic workflows, making them more meaningful is very important for us, right? But, it's a good question to ask when it comes to how do you actually size that opportunity, right? Number one. And, for, that opportunity, what are you willing to take, the risk when it comes to, budget allocations and so on and so forth, right? So one point for sure, AI is here to stay, right? So that in many ways makes decisions easy. But of course, there are ways to calibrate it, right? One of the ways to calibrate it would be, hey, are you looking to boil the ocean? Or are you looking to build specific products, right? Specific use cases that have a known, consumption base, right? If that sizing is well enough, what you invest initially, there is a return on that investment, right? And you scale up, right? And with AI, a lot of times, scaling up is but given, right? So I would always put that as, understand your market well, size that opportunity well, Obviously you'll have to build your business case. You'll have to convince your leadership, for, the investment that it, entails. But then, the path becomes easier when you have your early wins, a few charter customers to start off, and hopefully you can, scale up, that process.
Great, great. Thanks, Shama. So there is one question which is in continuation. Maybe Krishna and Gaurav, you can take this. The question from Naveen is, while moving from experiment to business solution, how we can manage these metrics, business outcomes and success metrics or criteria, security and guardrails, cloud cost analysis, creative matrix. So I think we've touched upon a little bit, but maybe Krishna will take your view first, and then I'll ask Gaurav to add.
Yeah, I think start off with a baseline. Where are you today? Okay, what are your expenses for each of these components today? And monitor this over a period of time. Again, I keep saying this again and again. AI is not a destination. Don't try to achieve your goals in next 1 month, 2 months. It's a destination. It's a journey. Okay. Look how this whole matrix is transitioning over a period of time, and that's very important. But having a big fundamental, that's your starting point.
Yeah, I agree with what Krishna said. These metrics may be different for different organizations, but one is baselining, as Krishna said. The other is, very rarely are we solving problems that have not been solved by others. Right? So I'll take an example and I'll try I wanted to answer the previous question as well. How do you measure, how do you objectively assess revenue as a KPI? So in my one of my previous companies, we had a extensively, heavily human-led clinical documentation solution. And as Gen AI-based clinical documentation solutions came in, we could see customers invariably complaining, we love you guys, we love your company, but, the Gen AI-based solution is better, cheaper, faster. So I'm afraid we'll have to move. And then we realized that if this trend continues, out of the X million dollars of revenue that we have from our current business, we will lose about 50%. Yeah. And if we build the solution, we will be able to retain at least what we already have. So that is one way of measuring the revenue potential of the product that you want to build. Sometimes you can measure it very objectively like this. On other occasions, you're trying to build something to create a new revenue stream, right? So then how do you measure it? That is where you make educated guesses and you place some bets also. But it is very important to put a stake in the ground and say, look, this is what I'm looking to achieve. If you just keep it open-ended, that can drag you down the rabbit hole. And on the metrics, we always say in product management, there are only two kinds of metrics, those that matter and those that don't. There are a ton of vanity metrics out there, which are created to fill a screen full of beautiful widgets. Don't worry about it. Just look at a handful of things that make a real business impact. Right? If number of tokens consumed is not a business impacting metric for you because you're deploying SLMs in your own cloud, who cares? Right? So there's no ready answer for that question, but it's a critical question to ask yourself.
And there's just one more, which is in continuation with the metrics thing, is for early adoption of AI tools like Copilot, Gemini, etc. in the team. What are the various metrics we can use?
I'll probably say something. Again, I feel very strongly about this. There are three kinds of metrics. Input metrics. How many tokens of ChatGPT did you use this month, Gaurav? If it is less than 100,000, you're not doing a good job. Okay, I'll put a 50,000 page file or ask it to summarize a 10-hour video on YouTube. I'll use my 100,000 tokens. Everybody is happy, including my manager. But that makes no sense for the business. The second kind of metric is the output metric. Right? How many pages of output did you create, Gaurav, this week or this month? How many slides, how many documents, blah, blah, blah. Again, it makes no sense to me. What you have to focus on is what is my outcome metric. am I able to move the needle meaningfully? Am I able to expedite my product development life cycle, my sprint velocity, by automating test cases? That outcome metric is what I would strongly recommend you focus on. Everything else is just vanity metric. It'll drag you down the rabbit hole.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Gaurav. Krishna, did we lose you or did you just
No, I'm
show
here. I'm
back?
here.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. Did you want to add anything to this, or Shoma, did you want to add? Otherwise, we'll.
I think Gaurav was spot on. Outcome metrics is all that you have to worry about. You don't worry everything else. It's vanity. Like you keep saying it. It's nice term actually. But I think outcome is what matters.
Yeah, and like we discussed at the start, right? Who owns the outcome of AI is critical to even, it's basically a baseline, a readiness criteria to even get started. Yeah.
Okay, so I think now we are going towards more difficult questions. So Girish is asking if each one of you has a specific dollar per million savings target from the management for the implementation of the AI. And I think he has a follow-up question also. So we can take both the questions together, which Girish has posted. Assuming you have defined specific business problems from the internal users, on what parameters do you decide whether to develop the AI solution in-house or through external vendors? So let's first go to what are the specific $1 million targets that you guys have, and then what are the specific business problems. So Shoma, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and not disclosing any values, right? It's very clear, right? We all have targets. We all have targets. It's as simple as that. Those targets are definitely in dollar or rupee term, right? Number two. Number three, one would be in what areas, right? Like I had initially spoken about targets when it comes to internal efficiency, right? And targets related to revenue. So they're two, very clear-cut pies, right? If I take internal efficiency, right, it's also a lot about how do you compute that dollar value, right? Which is equivalent to cost saving by having a value capture, process, right, across, time saved, across stat improvement, and any other metric that you're targeting, right? And most likely it will be stat improvement, right? Which is a clear-cut metric, right? And in terms of additional volumes delivered, right, which is volume expansion related metrics, right? Given the capacity is same, right? In other words, it means I'm not hiring more people to deliver a quantum of work. I am actually delivering it with a smaller capacity, and hence the capacity saved can then be pushed to deliver another item, another work item, or another more volume, right? So looking at that as a metric, obviously you'll have to have your monthly process to collect the metrics, compute the equivalent value, which is more of a notional value, right? The real value happens only when you take action on it. For example, are you really, and it's a very touchy topic, right? If you have, saved, certain capacity, right? Is it something that you will utilize for a new product, new solution, new area, or reprioritize your effort, or you are really taking a hard call in terms of downsizing, etc., right? So those are, things that, involves beyond, technology decisions, right? So that's one part of the thing. The other part I wanted to touch upon was on revenue side, right? It's important to look at AI beyond cost savings, beyond process improvements, but being an, revenue earner, and in many cases, a multiplier, right? A revenue multiplier in the current ecosystem that we live in, right? The winners would obviously be the ones who have, a product that is useful, right? And not just shiny, right? It's useful. It is embedded deeply into our customers and our partners' ecosystems, right? And getting that, product out, quickly, right? And the level of robustness it deserves, right, is very important for all of us. So that is what my leaders expect from me, right? To put it directly. Did I miss any part of the question, Avanti? Just coming back to, there were a couple of questions, right? A follow-up as well.
Yeah. So the second one was specific business problems from the internal users. I think we touched upon that, but a little bit on what parameters do you decide whether to develop the AI solution in-house or through external vendors, buy versus build, I guess.
Yeah. Keep going, Krishna, if you want to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You can put it off. I'll jump in. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I'll go ahead then.
Right,
Just a quick comment. Yeah, a quick comment. So I think in today's agentic AI ecosystem, I think it's easier decision on buy versus build if you have the in-house capacity. And the reason why I say that is, um, you know, in earlier days, and we all spent 20 plus years in the industry, right? It was a lot about skills, capability, and so on and so forth, right? To be able to take a call saying, oh, I need to outsource this, or hey, I need to, have, a subscription based, access, right, to a product or a SaaS platform, right? Today, if you have the in-house capability with AI itself, right, and AI, in the as coding agents, right, you typically can scale up an idea, right, a very initial thought process into a prototype, and more often a working prototype. You can play around, experiment for a lot, much more than what you could do with people-based teams, right? And then be able to figure out whether that solves your problem, right? But remember it requires a certain level of internal capability in the organization, right? So I would actually put that as it's easier today to take a buy versus build decision, right? Given that AI is a huge force multiplier when it comes to building stuff, right? And I'm sure all of you have experimented with the latest out there, right? With Cloud Code and the other tooling that is out there. That is a level that one would need to exploit, right? And see how you could build yourself versus buy. Of course, there are buy decisions that matter, right? You can't just go and build a CRM platform. You go and subscribe to Salesforce as an example, right? But they are big ticket items. For a lot of internal tooling, a lot of services, a lot of other items that we deliver, I think it's something one should think of, right? Can we build it ourselves with AI? Yeah, Gaurav, Krishna, your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I'll take the second question first. With the build versus buy, definitely I'm skewed towards the build part of it. Goes back to my earlier comment, one size does not fit all. The same applies here as well. And CIOs want to have the best of all worlds, which is only possible when you build it yourself. And building some of these solutions are also getting a little more easier with AI. Again, you have AI assisted coding platforms, you have low code platforms, which makes the whole process of build a lot more less cumbersome than what it was a few years back. So definitely my vote is for the build part of it. And the first question, where would I spend $1 million? Again, that goes back to what's your organization's enterprise strategy. There are some enterprises who are looking at cutting costs this year. There are some enterprises who are looking at expanding their markets. There are some enterprises who are looking at growing inorganically. Their focus is M&As this year. Okay, and there are great ways of how AI can be leveraged in the M&A market as well to make those M&As successful. So it actually boils down to what your enterprise goals, enterprise strategy is.
I'll just add one more lens to that decision of build versus buy. If you're trying to build something which is your business's secret sauce or an intellectual property, build it. But if you're trying to build something which is already available as another company's intellectual property, I'll give you an example, right? If I'm a bank and I'm trying to figure out whether this customer will pay their credit card bills on time or not, that is my bank's secret sauce. I want to build it. But the ability to use a voice agent to make a phone call to the patient and answer their queries, that's not my intellectual property. No, I'll buy a voice bot from the market. So that is also one lens. Please keep that in mind.
Great. And there's just one more question. And since we are now running against time, I want this question, maybe Gaurav, if you can take this. While we focus on KPIs like cost savings and TAT improvement for AI solutions, what KPIs can help us evaluate potential losses so we can decide if an AI solution is truly needed? If you could take that.
So this question can probably be interpreted in two ways. One is what happens if you don't do AI, right? What is the potential loss of business that you might be looking at to players who do use AI? That's one lens. The other lens is what happens if you try to do AI and it doesn't work, it fails. So failed one is relatively easy because you already know the cost that you're going to budget. I'm going to put in a 20 people team, a million tokens a month on Gemini, this cloud infra, blah, blah, blah. That's an easy one. But to me, the bigger concern should be, will I lose revenue or will I even be in the market? You will daily you will hear news that startups are shutting shop because of what these AI products are now offering out of the box. In healthcare, prior authorization companies are under tremendous pressure because Claude said, here is a free plugin, do prior auth. So that is the potential loss of existence that one is potentially looking at.
Great, thanks, Gaurav. And Krishna and Shama, I think the next question is more interesting, and if we have time, then we'll get back. But I think we should take this one. Are any of the panelists started evolving roles with hybrid human plus AI agents in their business workflows? And can you share an example and outcomes they're seeing? Maybe Gaurav, again, we'll start with you here. And I think Krishna and Shama can add.
I don't want to take too much time on this, but this is the path of evolution from human to human plus AI and possibly AI only.
Yeah.
It's the human in the loop is an integral part of the journey. It's not an
Okay.
option.
All
Yeah,
right.
and in the
Krishna?
advisory, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Krishna.
Yeah. No, the answer is yes. If we're all using code assisting agents like us, replicates of the world, okay, these are agents even in a true sense which are helping our entire development life cycle. So the answer is yes in some form, but it will only get more and more detailed. You will have agents working together with generic workforce as we progress to complete your tasks. It's only going to get more and more complex as we progress from here.
Great, thanks. Shama, your answer to this?
And beyond the tech ecosystem with AI, code agents, I think even in common business process, like say a secondary research. So if you're running an advisory team, right, and you have a team of consultants and analysts, right, who study, and build insights, right, using data all over the internet, right, and subscribing to specialized syndicate reports and all of that. You today absolutely have a lot of AI assistants that enable that process, right? Of course, the analyst is a key cog in that loop, right? Of course, but there is a bunch of agents that can today scan through the net, identify relevant pieces of information, stitch it together, generate multiple scenarios, multiple viewpoints, and of course, the analyst will have to curate, importantly validate, right, to ensure fact checks are done. But again, fact checks can also to some extent at least be accomplished through agents with guardrails and other things, right? So secondary research I see in terms of the consulting world, right, is an area that is obviously seeing a lot of adoption of AI as assistance.
Great, thanks. So I think we are at the end of the session. So I just wanted to go back to last question that I wanted to ask was the practical advice for the CXOs. So if a CXO wants to deliver a meaningful AI initiative within the next 6 months, what do you think would be the first 2 or 3 actions that they should start taking immediately? Shoma, since we are already there with you, what would you advise?
Yeah, sure. I think, to put it this way, I mean, instead of asking a question like, can AI do this or can it do that? I think the question is, can AI be embedded in process A, process B, process C, right? Because it's a given that it can, in many ways, support, right? But more importantly, one would look at AI not as a tool, but as a business transformation initiative, right? It is, I think that lens is important, right? To look at, AI as a business transformation goal rather than a tool where you need to, or an IT project, right? I think that'll be the wrong lens to look at. But end of the day, it's very important to, we have a very clear-cut line on ownership, especially, who owns the AI outcomes. I think it's very important, for us to ensure not just something gets built, but something gets used, and basis the usage, a value is delivered and captured, right, and reported, right? So that'll be a key thing to be very clear on. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Krishna, your advice for the CXOs?
Yeah, so I'll say three things. One is identify what to do. Maybe it could be through a small value workshop with all your key strategic leaders. Okay, the second point is who will do it. Identify ownership. We spoke at the beginning of the session as well. Ownership is not about accuracy of the models. It's ownership for the outcomes. And the third one is keep your first use case has to be a simple one, a low hanging fruit which can prove prove to the organization that this works. I think this would be the three key points.
Great, thank you. And Gaurav, your final advice?
Keep it simple, pick an initiative, go deep, show value delivered. That is, nothing succeeds like success. So that's what the CX has to keep in mind, deliver value.
Great, great. Thank you. Great advice. And I'm sure the leaders who have attended today will definitely take back this advice. And thank you all for sharing such valuable insights. Thank you, audience, for being so interactive and asking all the questions. I'm sure that from this conversation, we can say that AI success is not just about algorithms. It's about aligning data, processes, operating models, and leadership commitment. So once again, thank you all the leaders for being part of this conversation and the audiences for joining us today. And for any further questions or queries and some of the questions which have remained unanswered, please write to me at mumbai@nasscom.in and I'll be able to revert on that. So with this, we come to the conclusion of this webinar. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And we look forward to continuing such conversations in future sessions. So thank you, everybody. See you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, everyone. Good